Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Gina Smarecki. I'm the Cybersecurity Events Manager at PDI, and I'm excited to be your host for this live session today. Today's webinar features two of our cybersecurity subject matter experts. We are excited to talk about the human layer of cybersecurity and why awareness training still matters. If you do have questions during the presentation, please submit them in the Q&A tab. You're welcome to chat in with us as well. And just so you know, the webinar is being recorded and you will receive an email with a link to watch the recording. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our speakers today, Marcy Elder and Mike Pedrick. Marcy is a cybersecurity product leader with 7 years of experience driving innovation and technology. She specializes in bringing cutting-edge solutions to the market with a focus on AI and security. Just last year, she led the development and launch of one of the first AI-driven real-time threat detection solutions, redefining how MSSPs and MSPs protect their customers. Mike Pedrick is the VP of Cybersecurity Consulting at PDI. He's been providing technology, security, compliance, and risk management consulting services to organizations across several industries for nearly 20 years. In addition to his role at PDI, he's an accredited trainer and chapter board member for ISACA, mentoring cybersecurity and risk management professionals. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike to kick things off.
Thank you, Gina. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for attending. I'm honored to be a part of this panel with Marcy. Marcy is absolutely wonderful. So we're going to be talking about security awareness training. We're going to start out with a primer on what awareness training is, what a program looks like. We'll talk through some statistics and risk mitigation strategy components for a security awareness training program. We'll talk a little bit about its impact on compliance and how you can leverage security awareness training programs to pass or get significantly closer to passing your audit events. We'll talk about impact to the business associated with security awareness. We'll offer you some resources, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time at the end for your questions. I might also add, if you have questions during the process and you want to submit them, please do so through the Q&A section. Chat's probably okay too, but we'll be keeping a closer eye on Q&A throughout the process. So with that, we'll go on ahead. What is security awareness training in general terms? And Marcy, I welcome your input in this particular process.
Absolutely.
I always try not to put on my professor hat straight away and just act as though I'm reading from a textbook. But in the broadest of terms, from my perspective, a security awareness training program is part of a larger, more comprehensive risk management program for an organization. Realistically speaking, we're not just doing security awareness training just because we can or we have to, et cetera. We're actually leveraging this thing as part of that defense in depth strategy to reduce risk to the organization. I often say that I would gleefully trade a whole organization full of semi-deputized suspicious users over even the best engineers on my IT team. If I can trust my user base to say something when they see something that shouldn't be happening, that's significantly more effective. That's a better approach in that particular space. So with that in mind, there's a couple of things I want to touch on with security awareness training. The first, of course, is that we want to give the user base enough information to know when something hinky is happening. I hate to use the word hinky in this context, but I'm sort of glad that I got it in there. Anyway, if something that shouldn't be happening is happening, we want our users to know to whom should they send that alert. What is the process? How do I get that in front of, the professionals that can help to head off something at the pass, right? Make sure that something doesn't happen that would be super deleterious to the organization. So the lines of communication are a big thing that we can get out there. Also, what does it look like? What does a phishing email look like? What does a social engineering attack start to look like? How do I know, or what are the ways in which I can identify a deep fake attack? How do I know if it's not my CEO on the other end of the line? And how do I avoid wiring $200,000 to a unknown source across the globe if I can get away with it? The other thing that an awareness training program, from my standpoint, the other opportunity here is that we can get our corporate policies, our corporate expectations, our expectations of behavior out there to the user base in a methodology that's more conducive to that process. It doesn't have to be slapping down a ream of paper in a policy in front of them. We can actually socialize that information in a way that's digestible. I might also put out there too, and stop me if you think this is outside the bounds of security awareness training. We always the great debate from a practitioner perspective is, do we give folks too much information? Do we give them the opportunity to understand how things work so that they could perpetrate an attack? And my philosophy over the years has been, I want folks to know. I want folks to know not how to compromise the company per se, but I want them to know enough detail to recognize when it looks like something like that is happening.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts there?
I'm with you. I'm with you there. And because it can get, I think I'm in the camp of we don't want to necessarily overburden with all of the potential like variations on what, for example, what a phishing email could look like. But if we like a good program, if you step back from the application of it, is getting to those suspicious users, like training people using your organization's policies and a good training program to say, is this false urgency? Is it something that's creating anxiety where, oh, I need to take action very quickly? Teaching them to understand that in relation to a company's policies, and more, maybe less on the, what are the latest techniques? All of that should be included, but to the most, people are only going to be able to retain so much information. So can they action it? Can they understand what they're trying to do? Can they change behavior? What can they do with the information that they learn from these policies and from the training that will be effective in protecting the organization? So I think I'm in those camps.
Yeah, I agree. It's always we've all gone through this training process. We've all gone through the simulations. We've done the clear desk policy training where you have to identify the conditions that violate that policy. I think those are all of value. And I think that it's a good way for folks to see what concepts that are a part of my corporate life, security awareness training, how do I apply those in my personal life, right? So I think a good security awareness training program also provides benefit for folks when they clock out, when they go home. How can I use this information in my personal life to improve my operational security posture?
Yeah, and I'd completely agree with that, because it's the things that they will learn through a corporate training policy are things that are applicable. It's the same kind of thing. Like if you're getting, one of the attack vectors is through a text. So like I'm sure many people here have had those text, like a text from your CEO, hey, can you go out and go buy these 5 gift cards for $500 and send it, like just getting that information. And those are things that happen on your personal devices, that happens in your family. So this has a wider impact than just the organization. Now, the organization is the one that's paying for it, but by doing that training, then that user has applications that will like have them have more opportunities to see, like have hands-on reactions to phishing type emails and texts and things like that, that they will then also take it back into their organization. So they'll have more, more saturation of this training.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good segue. I think I'm going to move us to the next aspect of this, which is that part of the reason we want to harden the human, so to speak, is a full 82% of breaches involve like human error. I think that from a practitioner standpoint, we've seen over the years that attackers have figured out that taking a advanced piece of technology head on is not nearly as effective, or they're not nearly as successful as if they reach out and try to compromise a human.
I'd say 100%. And that attack vector is so broad that just trying to only defend by using technology. Now, this is it's a wider conversation about defense in depth, but by this is one of the most impactful layers of security is with the people, because it's people that are interacting with your systems. It's people who are writing down passwords and saving them in places. It's people who are reusing passwords, or there's a single account for some access and the credentials get hacked, and that access is then out there. Those kinds of things are all small and individual things on their own, but it all comes back to training the people on these good practices that will be like have this kind of impact overall. So, and it's not just that too. So something that's really important about like a good training program here as a part of as a part of that with this kind of an impact is that not only are we teaching these users, they actually will change their behavior. They will actually learn. They'll take this information back. They will put it into practice. They will start to like think about, oh, I shouldn't do that. That could be risky. They'll start to take that on themselves out of the training. So it's not just we do security awareness training. It checks a box for compliance, although that is a piece of it and it's important from a business standpoint, but that the users will actually change their behavior based on the information that they're learning, because otherwise it's just checking a box, but it isn't necessarily protecting the organization.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with that. It's often the difference between a normal day and a catastrophic day if a user pauses before they click on a link, right? They just hover over it, look at the URL and say, maybe I won't. Maybe I won't click that. Maybe I'll report it instead, just on the outside chance it's a malicious link. So no, I think that's a really fantastic point. I also liked the point you made about compliance, right? Which I think that we're going to touch on here in a couple of minutes. That a big part of a security awareness training program, a massive part of a security awareness training program, of course, is passing audits and becoming compliant with whatever regulatory or cybersecurity framework the organization has adopted into their sphere. But I might also point out that it's also a good, again, defense measure. So we have a couple of statistics here. Join me on this journey if you don't mind. 83% of organizations have had more than one breach, right? $4.9 million average total cost of a breach in the US. Now, the bigger stat there, and I'll let you speak to a couple of these others as well, or I'll ask you to anyway, is that 10% increase, that 10% jump from 2023 to 2024. I think that we're seeing an almost exponential curve in the cost of breaches because again, the human is often very easy to compromise. We're storing so much data, we're leveraging so much data, and we really need to, again, deputize the user base so that if they see something, they say something and they recognize the hallmarks of an attack.
Absolutely. And I think on that point too, is that, the cost is ballooning because the attack surface is ballooning. There are so many more things that are connected. To your point earlier, there's so much more data being stored, being transferred. It's just, it just continues to grow in addition to our organizations beginning to grow. And if you're looking at, the stats of these unfilled cybersecurity positions with the advent of AI and how it's changing the cybersecurity professional, the engineer's role, what users are expecting out of different experiences, how much like AI has access to across all of these different changes in our landscape. So we have unfilled positions, but the landscape changes so fast, especially right now in our age of AI. So we have unfilled positions, but we still come back to the ballooning attack space. We need to have experts that can handle and meet all of these new changes, but then your program has to also keep up with it. So it's really, it can be harder to protect across a growing landscape. It can be harder to find qualified individuals, but the root will always come back to, if you can train users on these good best practices, those will always apply, even in new and innovative frontiers of what else we can do with AI as everything grows and changes. It comes back to the same thing. is this something that is creating fear, uncertainty, doubt, that is pushing you to, like, pushing a user to take an action? Oh, maybe I need to pause and take a step back. That will never, like, that piece will never not be necessary. So it's something that's really important here. And then, with the growing, like, connected enterprises, the cost is going to continue to go up, because it's not just the resolution after a breach, but you have to try to make sure you have these good policies in place, so that when you have an, if not just if, but when there is a breach and you have to do an incident response, you have policies in place, you understand where things are, you have a disaster plan in place, you have ways to follow that you can actually then recover from a breach when it happens. But having this program in place to generally protect from it as a first line of defense, and then having the other piece of it with the policies and the compliance play to make sure that you can actually do something after it with the incident response. I know you've worked in that realm for a long time. You might want to, if you can say more on that.
I have. Yeah, it's generally speaking, as a practitioner, I'm often having to tell clients that there's no perfect solution, right? There is no such thing as this utopian destination where we're done. We've secured everything. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Security is a hygiene. It's a posture. It's a way of life. It's brushing your teeth, 3 times a day for the rest of your life, and hopefully flossing as well. Although, anyway, so it's not a destination, it's a journey. There is no perfect. And so when you look at security awareness training as a part of that larger mosaic of controls, having a good awareness training program it relieves some of the pressure on some of those other controls in place, right? If you think about our connectivity to the outside world as being represented by a river, right? I've got a raging river 1.5 miles out, and I've got a dam somewhere along the line that sort of brings that volume of water down a little bit. That might be representative of spam filters or mail content filters. And then with less water after the dam, now maybe that's still not enough. I need to reduce that flow a little bit further. So I'm going to divert some things in some ways, et cetera. But the bottom line is, again, in this metaphor, water's going to get to me. Water's going to get to me, and it's going to be either good, usable, potable water, or it's not, right? And so I tend to look at security awareness training as again, relieving pressure on those other systems. Filters fail, spam filters fail. It's a game of cat and mouse. The attackers are always coming up with novel ways to get their content to us. Some of them dead brilliant, candidly, almost admirably effective. Not that I'm ever making the case for an attacker, but
Right.
anyway, so security awareness training program is a really great complement to those other controls, and it is the point at which the user is now a part of that defensive posture. So, which is what we want. We tend to somewhat cynically refer to users as our greatest threat, but I'm going to disagree. Users are also our greatest asset in this particular way. Again, we're deputizing them. They're a part of our force. They're a part of our army against the attackers.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And that's, it's something too that it's not maybe a particular piece of our slide here, but we can get into the, the business impact as we're looking at our, our users as our defense. And then something, another piece of it is that, a good program is going to have this kind of ROI for an institution, but the program needs to work with those humans. So we had a conversation with a CISO a couple years back who would say that he would not allow any kind of security awareness training into his organization if it was going to make that user feel small, belittled, embarrassed. Because the other side of it is, if the user does not want to report something because they might get in trouble, that's something you don't know about then as an organization. So the way you deploy a security awareness training program needs to work with people, because it's not if you're going to get fish, it's not if you're going to maybe fall for something, it's when. I don't know hardly anyone who has never, at least like partially fallen for some kind of fish type situation, whether it's it's a text, it's an email, it's some kind of social engineering attack. It happens to almost everyone. And when you can enable people to be trained on it and learn more, and then they can feel safe to report it and say, I did something, but here's what happened. That is more protection than belittling them or saying, here, now you have 8 hours of remedial training. No, continuous training will get that, get your users to have that behavior change better than just not, because you need to know about it when it happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to make sure that we touch on the compliance piece, because I see on this slide regulatory fines. We've been talking in the context of risk management, reducing risk of adverse events happening to the organization, but regulatory risk is a risk just like any other risk. That risk being represented by, again, fines and penalties against the organization being found out of compliance. But something you mentioned triggered something in my mind that everybody I've ever talked to who has inadvertently unleashed ransomware or something into an environment has come back and said, yeah, I knew it. Like, I had a suspicion that it was a thing. I rolled the dice, and now I got to go through this training again. And it's the training that I already know not to click suspicious links. I just happened to do it this time. So having a more strategic, intelligent approach to security awareness training is also a big part of this. So if you don't mind, let me move us to the compliance piece.
Yeah,
I
I'd like
like
to,
talking
and I'd
about
like to hear
compliance.
about that too, because when we were building out our, how we structured PDI's security awareness training program, is like you and I in our conversations about it's what it means to be technically compliant, and where do you find the balance between like going all in and having a very like intensive program versus being compliant, and how we fall in we want it to not just be compliant, but also be effective and be secure.
Yeah, my concern with sometimes when we're pursuing compliance, and earmuffs for all the folks who don't want to hear this, but from a security practitioner perspective, compliance is sort of a triggering phrase, right? Compliance is not the same as security. Again, there's a lot of legacy folks who think of security as finally we're done. This is the ultimate goal. This is the goal line. This is where we get our touchdown. And compliance just is not interested in a touchdown. And so I have to counsel folks to understand that this is all part of that risk management strategy. And if the organization has decided that our risk is managed based on compliance, so be it, right? That's the target. That's what we're working for, or working toward. Hopefully, we're all working together. But I say that to say this. I've seen a lot of awareness training programs sort of falter when they become a game of stump the user, right? How do I get users to click on things to goose the metrics and demonstrate value for the program itself? And I think that that's often counterproductive. That puts people into a awareness training fatigue state that is, again, totally counter to the process. And I would also argue doesn't meet either the intent or the letter of those compliance goals.
Yeah, exactly that, where you are technically compliant, but the solution and the program you've put into place isn't effective. So it's not security, it is only compliance.
Right. Totally agreed. I might pause for a second. I've got a question from Bob Burns. Do you find that videos, short email tips and tricks on a regular basis, or in-person training is best? Any is good and more is better. Um, my take, super quick, Bob, is all of the above, right? Make the information available to folks where they are. Video content, having a video library available is never a bad thing, while understanding that uh, people have day jobs, right? They're not going to spend their afternoon watching your library of video content, but putting it out there for those that want to consume it, want to uh, get enjoyment from watching that content, good idea. Um, but a holistic approach to the delivery method is best. Marcy, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. It's you've got to be able to make the content digestible, um, available, and make sense in with the attention span that your users who, like you said, Mike, have a day job, have to try to do this in addition to day job. Usually, the most effective is like if you're looking at like the social media type of attention span for your users, small actionable insights and bites of content tend to be the things that stick, and it's not just a one-time thing. So that's the other part of this compliance story too, is like you have a training program in place, okay, you're compliant, but you're like, are you actually mitigating your risk with that? So having bite-sized content and content that is delivered semi-regularly, so there's additional training, so you keep it in front of them in ways that aren't burdensome to their time. So like videos, and could be emails, it could be messaging. Gamification works really well. Other incentives of completing and interacting with the security awareness training, and then the hands-on examples. So those phishing simulations, they work. They are examples of things that will help users. Like, it's a very quick thing to say, hey, here's my email. Oh no, that looks like phishing report. That's super fast, but it's something that just has to be set up and over time. So small bites, small bites often, to kind of keep it front of mind but not be a burden.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. One other thing I want to touch on, or I think is worth touching on, is um, the goal of the program and how do we demonstrate value. We've already talked about what doesn't demonstrate value, what doesn't represent value from the program, and I want to zero in on something, and that's metrics, right? So I've already said, I know I teed it up. I said, hey, when we pursue metrics for the sake of metrics, we often find ourselves in a position where we're just trying to stump users, and that's counterproductive. But I do want to touch on the idea that every risk practitioner understands that in order for us to demonstrate value to the organization, we got to have some degree of metrics. We got to know where we are against a specific goal. And so that's another aspect of a really good, especially managed security awareness training program that I would be looking for as a practitioner, as a consumer of this sort of service is show me who's clicking, right? I want to know who I need to, I don't want to punish the whole organization. I just want to go work with the people who aren't, it's not sinking in, or they're not able to
Yeah,
identify what's going on, or maybe,
absolutely. Because then you can tailor. Like if you
yeah,
say, hey, my finance department are my key culprits. Maybe I need to change my approach for the
right.
phishing emails, or they need different training. Like you can help those users by having those metrics instead of that, what you're saying, inflating the metrics or punishing users.
Yeah. Well, and you never know too when somebody surfaces something. They click on a thing, and when you investigate at that particular individual, maybe they identify something that's novel. Maybe it's an approach that isn't represented in our training up to that point. So rather than just see them as, oh my gosh, I can't believe Greg over in accounting clicked a thing again, you know, that's not okay, right? Maybe Greg identified something that was not previously on our radar as a threat vector, and that features in our next training.
100%.
All right, we have just a couple of minutes left. So I think, Marcy, I want to hand it over to you. Can you tell us more about this service? Is there anything you want to share about the service itself?
Yeah, and we've covered a lot of it. It's what a good program looks like is really the way that we built it out. And Mike and I work very heavily on our approach to this to be, yes, we need to meet compliance because that is one of the key drivers to then spend money on it. But here are all the other benefits, and then here's how you implement it so that it's going to be useful, it's managed, it's something that it's easy to deploy, but actually has an impact in reducing that risk, because that's the real key here. It's not just compliance like we've hit upon. It is another and extremely important layer of security and a risk program. So like our managed service includes all of these aspects. It's this gamified approach. It's a fully managed. So we manage and monitor, deploy it for you. And we can help you tailor it. So those types of things, like Greg in accounting always clicks on this. Well, you've got the reporting and you have that customization to be able to tailor the training to meet areas of business where you can see that you've got additional risk or you've got people clicking on things. But so you can tailor that training and help alleviate the risk potential of like specific organizations within your enterprise. So I know we're at time too. So I really appreciate everyone for attending. I want to hand it over to Gina here. We're right at our mark.
All right. Thank you both for sharing all of that. We are at time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. We appreciate everyone for joining us today. Of course, our website is full of free, fantastic cybersecurity resources. Take a glance at your convenience. If anyone here is interested in learning more about PDI, Security Awareness Training as a Service, I'll share a link to the product overview document here in the chat for you. It'll also come out in the email that I send out tomorrow as a follow-up to this webinar. And I would like to quickly mention our next webinar, which will be July 29th, which will be our new threat report that will be coming out for highlights from Q2 of what we've seen in the threat landscape. So that will be happening next month. Let me share that link as well. And with that, if anyone has any questions we weren't able to address, go ahead and email us at securitywebinars@pditechnologies.com. And we will go ahead and make sure those questions get to the right folks here. Upon exiting the webinar today, there will be a short survey that pops up, and we'd appreciate any feedback that you have for us today. And with that, any closing thoughts from Mike, Marcy?
Just thank you so much for attending and listening. We are very happy to answer any additional questions you have, whether it's about the service, or it's about security awareness training programs in general. So thank you all for your time. And thank you, Mike, for being an excellent co-host as always.
I don't know how I can improve on any of that. Thank you all.
All right. Well, on behalf of PDI Security Network Solutions, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.